Well, guys, this is one of those situations where it is what it is. We're all looking at the exact same thing, and for those joining us, I've got Billy here, Mr. Too Tough, and I've got Adrian from Suspect Sky Channel. And frankly, this is one of the most impressive looking UFOs I've ever seen. Uh, Better than the last couple that were in the news, actually. Um, Who's going to start us off? Adrian, this is kind of right up your alley anyway. You want to give us some thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. This is definitely one of the best sightings, video recordings that I've ever seen in my career, in my involvement with this. This is a UFO video captured by, I think his name is Larry Fox in San Diego, California, just yesterday morning Pacific time, and it was reported by NBC7 in San Diego, and it's an amazing capture of what I would call a UFO cluster or orb cluster. I find it very fascinating that as I've been researching this field and producing videos on this subject matter, the appearance of clusters is something that has occurred in greater frequency over the last 5 years. So the idea that there are multiple orbs in a constellation formation, some of them blinking, some of them moving, others standing still. This is a relatively modern phenomenon, and something that's increasing with greater frequency. And in a number of videos that I've done, particularly, I believe it's Alien Encounters, that video of mine, the intro begins with something similar to this in Brazil.
Interesting. All right, Adrian, I'm going to get some more thoughts from you on this in a second. Billy, do you have some initial thoughts?
It is quite impressive there. I mean, I find it hard to believe that some officials, especially FAA and whatnot, as military, don't know what that is. I'm pretty sure they do.
Well, technically, they haven't said they don't know what it is. Technically, they have not yet commented, and they have been prompted because the local NBC channel in San Diego, where this is all coming from, reached out to the local military for comment, and they didn't have any. And so officially, these are unexplained and unidentified. And yeah, that's interesting. Anything else pop to your mind immediately, Billy?
Yeah, immediately. If they don't know what it is, then we should probably ask for our money back. I mean, that's what that's their job, to know what these things are in the sky.
Yeah. Well, on the other hand, if this is something, on the level that would get us this excited, maybe it's a little bit beyond them. I'll give it that as well.
Yeah, if they don't say anything, I would suspect that myself.
Well, it's now been a whole day, pretty much. It's been a day, and there has been no word on it. We've all been on Google looking up every last thing that's been on here. I mean, I even set my search to the last 24 hours. I set my search to the last hour. There isn't anybody official who has said anything about this. There have been a couple of folks who have tried to offer some alternative theories. I find them highly unconvincing. The first one was somebody was saying, "Oh, it's a reflection off the window." I think that when you watch the video, you can pretty clearly see that's not a reflection off a window. Because if the lighting's gonna be good enough to get that good of a reflection, then you're gonna see reflections of more than just the lights. You're gonna see reflections of all kinds of things. If you don't believe me, wait until it's dark out tonight, turn the light on in whatever room you're in, and see how many reflections of things in that room you can see against a window that goes out. You can see more than just the lights. You can see intricate detail inside your room. Here, you can see no intricate detail. You only see what's outside, but you see these lights perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and say there's no chance this is a reflection. The only other thing I heard was that somebody tied a bunch of LEDs to balloons and let them off, and that's one of those things where it's like, okay, we can never 100% rule that out, but that's also on the ridiculous side of ridiculous. Adrian, thoughts?
I was just going to add to Billy's comment about FAA radar tracking. I find that the Chicago incident, I believe it was 2013, is very illustrative for this situation, where the FAA in Chicago, for the first couple days of that major sighting, said, we don't know what it is, we're not sure. And then once people became really interested in it, then it was some strange cloud weather phenomenon that, was involved. They kind of made up an excuse after the fact of the explanation that they supposedly always knew. And I find that the information you receive from the government reporting agencies during the first day or so is what is the truth. That if they don't know what it is while it's happening, then that has to be their official story. And then any sort of retroactive explanation of it tends to lose a lot of credibility. And then onto the reflection point, the configuration of lights in the video is unlike any configuration of the ground lights in the video. Usually if you're looking at a reflection in a window, it's going to have the same, symmetric properties as what you're seeing on the ground, the street lights and whatnot. Maybe motion of the video, which actually this video doesn't have pretty much any motion to it. You might be able to track a symmetrical pattern between what's on the ground and what you're seeing in the sky. But this video, the configuration is totally different. There's very little motion to attribute that. There's no flashing on the ground, which would explain the flashing in the sky. I would very, very, very much say that this is not a reflection in a piece of glass.
Yeah, and it's quite clear. You can get a certain sense of time from the pulsing on and off. There's no way that these are airplanes. And we actually had Michael Steinbacher on here earlier, and he, before we started recording, and he took a look at this, and he also said that there's no way that this was airplanes all in a line or anything like that.
Definitely not airplanes. I mean, the formation that they have is so unusual and just straight up bizarre. There would be no reason why drones or airplanes would fly in this kind of formation. Possibly, you could tie together balloons, but that would be a very sophisticated hoax. I mean, we're talking 20 airborne light packages all tied together with apparent three-dimensional depth. That would be extremely difficult and expensive to do.
And these aren't exactly the $5 LED things you get down at Target either. These things were, at least the magenta one, is really bright.
Oh, that's an excellent point. Yeah. So we're talking. So if this was a hoax, we're talking about somebody buying numerous different colored lights, but lights that are not only blue and red and magenta, but that even the hues between the individual lights are slightly different. By just a couple pixels. It would be a very expensive project to do.
All right, so
and even the structure of it too. I mean, we have I actually have the video paused on the formation itself. I mean, we have 2 or 3 lights that are closely together in kind of a subcluster. Then we have a line of lights that serve as their own linear cluster. And then we have an overall hexagonal pattern. I mean, that would be very difficult to build and then time the launch of each of these balloons to create that pattern. And then to have all the flashing lights and things like that to go all according to plan. I mean, it's pretty unlikely to be a hoax.
Yeah. All right. Well, so let's we always try to do things here with a a logical mind and a good amount of reason, but we can certainly entertain these discussions in an intellectual way. So let's go ahead and say, for the sake of argument, that these are UFOs. First thing that comes to my mind always whenever you've gotten over the hump of, is this real or not? And if we're going to say, okay, this looks pretty real, the first thing that comes to my head is this extraterrestrials, or is this our government screwing around? And I'm a big believer that our government knows how to defeat gravity and knows how to do a lot of this stuff. If that's the case, interesting drill. If there was supposed to be a stealth aspect to the drill, that's a 0/100. I think it'd be more interesting to talk about. Let's go ahead and suggest, okay, what if these are extraterrestrials? And the first thing that comes to my mind is all the UFOs that you see associated with earthquake zones and volcano eruptions, ones you see around tornadoes, which may or may not be real, but that's the first thing that would come to my mind if this was extraterrestrial UFOs. Are we getting ready to see some kind of a disaster in that area of the world?
Yeah, I mean, I have been a long follower of the appearance of mysterious lights near disaster zones, both before, during, and after when they occur. And there's some interesting theories. Is it a natural phenomenon? Is it an ultra-terrestrial phenomenon? Or is it an extraterrestrial phenomenon? It's hard to say with any definitiveness. I find very interesting the patterns that they form during these events. I mean, this thing, just looking at it on my computer screen, appears like an octagonal shape with one or two of the lights being an outsider of that shape. And I think it might be interesting to consider perhaps like mathematical properties that might be involved with supposed communication. One thought that I had earlier was that we send out prime numbers with the SETI program, assuming that extraterrestrials would, we might not speak the same language and might not ever be able to speak the same language, but prime numbers are a mathematical foundation of the universe that any civilization, regardless of sophistication, would be able to recognize a sequence of prime numbers. And seeing these lights, it kind of fascinates me, are they trying to match the spectral frequencies or colors and hues of lights of nearby locations or patterns that we would recognize as a way to communicate in much the same way that we would use prime numbers? So maybe to us, prime numbers in mathematics is more fundamental, but perhaps to them, the colors and hues of light is more fundamental, and they would assume that we would be able to observe intelligence behind that if they showed that kind of consistency.
That's interesting. Well, if there was some kind of a clear message, and there are people here who know how to read those messages, given the fact that people like us have gotten our hands on this video, I think we could say message received, and in all likelihood message classified,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. We, in our previous discussion, Adrian, which is posted on your channel, we talked about all the reasons why it may be seen as necessary to not acknowledge this life because of people's religious beliefs, because of mass hysteria, because of fear elements, things like that. Billy, you've been quiet. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I've been studying this picture here, and it's almost we can almost rule out the reflective thing if you go look at the pause it early on when it's zoomed out. You know, you can see the foreground there, and you see lights in the city there. If you look close enough, you'll see that these are double pairs of lights. Do you see that? In other words, the reflection, these lights in the foreground are reflecting off of a glass. However, they seem to be repeated right below one another. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Which suggests to me that what's in the sky is totally authentic, because it would be reflected. You know, it wouldn't be. You wouldn't have the reflection will be repeatable throughout the screen.
Yeah, because if it was a source behind the camera, it would have a better reflective, property than those lights out there.
Well, we do see reflections on the lights in the foreground, and they're consistent.
Well, frankly, taking a look at where the
rules that out altogether, in my opinion.
take a look at where the power line is. I don't even think this person's inside. This person walked outside. This is not a reflection of anything. I mean, this person at one point, when it zoomed in, this person's essentially looking directly up at a power line.
Yeah.
Don't tell me this guy's inside of his house.
It's questionable. Yeah, I see the lights on the foreground and the right. They appear to be paired, where the ones on the left don't appear to be paired. So you're right there. It may not be it just may be a coincidence that those lights are paired like that to the right. However, yeah, I mean, if that is a reflection, if it isn't, it still rules it out, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, Adrian, last thoughts.
Last thought. I could talk for another half an hour on this.
Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe we could do that on Fly on the Wall, actually. But
sure.
Yeah. So essentially, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is either the government screwing around in the sky or it's extraterrestrial UFOs. This is definitely something unexplained in the sky over San Diego. Military was reached for comment, or about a day ago. They have thus far refused. They have not commented. So, what's your take on this?
Yeah, my last thoughts. I suppose the takeaway thought of this would be. I don't think it's a reflection. I think that a hoax is impractical, like to the point where it's almost absurdly impossible to have hoaxed this. And now, assuming that it's a real thing, if it's the military, I don't see any rational reason or any rational justification to have done this. It's not in any formation that would make any sort of rational sense. It doesn't seem to be accomplishing any sort of rational purpose, like military training or experimental vehicle testing. So taking those into effect, now we have this unexplained series of lights, this cluster in the sky, and looking at the video, I see patterns, and I see perhaps numerology. I see a number of red lights, a number of blue lights, a number of gold lights. I see them positioned in particular ways and specific patterns, and it would be very, very, very exciting to ask the community to just look at this and share their thoughts with what might be their message to us, and that message might be a version of what we send out, which is prime numbers. So I would just be kind of curious to hear the community's thoughts on that.
Well, I think that, right below this video, the comment section is going to be a good place for that. And probably about 30 or 40 other tangents of discussion that this topic will spew. I fully think that we should all revisit this topic again on Saturday morning's Fly on the Wall discussion. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and say, let's not take up too much of people's time this evening, but this is definitely worth sharing. This is one of the best UFO sightings I've ever seen. I think you guys can agree.
Oh, definitely agreed.
Absolutely. Well, Billy, Adrian, thanks for letting me steal a little bit of your time tonight, and get some words on this for everybody. Much appreciated, guys. Be safe, everyone.